Thank you.
Senator O'Sullivan.
Thank you, Mr Acting Deputy President. I rise tonight to speak on a matter of quite significant importance relating to the sugar industry, predominantly in my state of Queensland. And I do so in support of federal colleagues, the members for Hinkler, Capricornia and Dawson, and 4,000-odd sugar grower producers in their electorates spread out along the eastern seaboard of Queensland, east of the Great Divide, stretching from Bundaberg in the south through to Cairns in the north. Mr Acting Deputy President, for over 100 years, 102 years in fact, there has been the equivalent of a single desk for the marketing of the commodity of sugar in this country. And given the bulk of that industry is in Queensland, I can say that there are no generations of sugar growers in my home state who have not practiced the marketing of their commodities, the economic interest they have in their commodities, through a single desk. That single desk is operated through a corporation known as Queensland Sugar Limited. Queensland Sugar Limited is a not-for-profit, tax-free company owned by the millers and grower producers in the sugar industry. There are 7 milling companies and their cane grower suppliers in Queensland who have an interest in QSL, and it supports the 4,000 sugar-growing businesses that I mentioned earlier. QSL, within the scope of being the single marketing desk, provides those growers and millers 4 key value offerings in the form of finance, pricing, marketing and logistics. Logistics involved with the efficient export of that commodity all around the world. The net sale proceeds and profits that are created by QSL, when available, are returned back to those growers and millers through the pricing pools through which they market their sugar, and have done, might I say again to reinforce my earlier statement, for over 100 years. So QSL, apart from those other services, provides the industry with the option to conduct forward pricing through QSL's books and offers a range of pooling options where pricing decisions are made on behalf of millers and growers within agreed risk parameters. This in turn provides both growers and millers with choices that allows them to take low risk, medium risk or high risk, or any other hybrid pool for them to place their commodity for sale on the world market. It is a very efficient method, it is a very fair method, it is a cooperative method, and might I say once more, and I will repeat myself a number of times during the course of this speech, Mr Acting Deputy President, a method that has lasted for over 100 years. Mr Acting Deputy President, there is a thing called the economic interest of the grower, and in effect a cane grower, when they harvest their commodity, take their cane to a mill for processing. Very few growers have a choice of mills. The natural geographic structure of the industry is where growers have to take their commodity. It is a commodity that spoils very quickly after harvest, and the harvest has a very short concentration period, so some 11.5 to 12 weeks. All growers within their season have to have their cane off and delivered to the mill. As you would know, for those who've been through cane growing areas, the commodity is transported in small light rail networks that takes it to their local mill. It's not as if they get a choice, as we might see in grain, where they can store their commodity, wait for market conditions to change, where they might get better price conditions, or the ability to transport it by road or rail to take to a choice of other millers in this case. So there is a very special, long-standing and unique relationship between a grower and their mill. Historically, Mr Acting Deputy President, these mills were owned cooperatively by the growers themselves. However, for reasons where time doesn't allow tonight, that tended to go out of trend in the 80s and the 90s. In fact, during that time, it could be argued that there was insufficient investment in this sector by growers and millers in their own interests, and it made the market, made the sector very vulnerable to investment. And in fact, it attracted a considerable amount of foreign investment. Now, those foreign investors need to be complemented. They come into our state, into our country, and invested large sums of money, and there is an argument that without them, the industry would have lagged behind best practices across the world, and there is no doubt that that would have ultimately had an impact, indeed a negative impact, on the industry and the marketing of this commodity. But at the very heart of what I'm speaking about tonight on behalf of these growers is the fact that there is a radical change at hand. In 2010, a company called Wilmar International invested about $1.75 billion in the cane industry in Queensland, and in doing so, it acquired significant control over about 2/3 of the commodity that is produced. Initially, at the time that this transaction occurred, Wilmar was familiar with the terms and conditions associated with the marketing of sugar in this country, and in fact indicated to the Foreign Investment Review Board that they did not anticipate disturbing any of the significant arrangements that were in place with sugar in our state. Now, Mr Acting Deputy President, I don't want to make any comments that draw any inference that Wilmar is anything but a respected international corporation, to whom our industry, I think, is somewhat indebted, given the timing and the extent of their investment in our country, and particularly in this sector. It's a very significant company, headquartered in Singapore. In fact, it ranks amongst the largest listed companies by market capitalisation in Singapore. It has operations in more than 20 nations, employs more than 80,000 staff, and has some 300 processing plants around the world, not just in sugar, but in palm oil cultivation, edible oil refining, oilseed crushing, consumer pack edible oils processing, specialty fats and biodiesel manufacturing. In fact, they have made a considerable investment in ethanol processing in Serena in Queensland, and for that they need our thanks and our support. However, Wilmar has decided to step away from the 100-year convention of marketing sugar in our state to go to its own direct marketing arrangements. Now, in doing so, Mr Acting Deputy President, this will truly have a significant negative impact on QSL, Queensland Sugar Limited, and there are those, and I'm not equipped to determine whether the statements are accurate or not, but there are those who have expressed the opinion that it will eventually see that QSL will no longer be able to operate. Wilmar has a relationship with 1,500 of these 4,000 growers in the state, and the impact of their decision will impact directly on those growers in the first instance, but it will then have an impact collaterally on the balance of the growers in the state. Now, Mr Deputy Acting President, it is at this point that the most significant note needs to be taken with respect to the core of the issue. For 110 years, I repeat 110 years or 102 years, these growers have had an economic interest in their sugar, and it has been on a 2/3, 1/3 basis. What happens is the grower takes their sugar to the mill, and it is recognised that 2/3 of that sugar processed belongs to them and 1/3 of the sugar belongs to the miller. Now, these things have been enshrined in contractual arrangements with cane supply agreements, which is that agreement, that contract between the grower and their mill, and the miller's raw sugar supply agreement, that is the agreement between the miller and QSL. Now, not only has this economic interest been recognised in these various contractual arrangements, but Mr Acting Deputy President, in 2010, Queensland Sugar Limited faced penalties of $110 million when it was unable to fill forward contracts that it had sold internationally. In line with the Convention of the Economic Interest, QSL properly, in my view, put the burden of the $110 million failure to supply, which was a result of inclement weather conditions in my state that did not allow for the harvest to be completed, back on to the millers and on to the grower producers, these many thousands of small family-owned farms. The grower producers did not blink. They took up their share of the burden, about $66 million, I'm instructed, and paid that through so that QSL could offset the penalties that it had incurred by its failure to be able to deliver on behalf of these growers and millers in the international marketplace. So again, just for the purposes of refreshing memory mid-speech, we have an economic interest by the grower producers. It's enshrined in their contract with their mill. It's enshrined in the contract between the mill and the marketer, in this case QSL, and it was tested, and it was truly tested when the growers had to share the contribution of the burden that occurred for the failure of supply in 2010. Mr Acting Deputy President, for almost a year, Wilmar has endeavoured to negotiate with QSL to make arrangements that allows them to do direct marketing with the growers' interest. During the course of that time, the matter of grower economic interest was discussed. It was on the agenda, and the parties were endeavouring to try and make a determination that would enshrine that interest in future arrangements, particularly contractual arrangements. Eventually, Wilmar has taken the decision to withdraw from QSL. Wilmar had decided that it would take not only its economic interest in the sugar that it processed, but that of the growers. There are those who are satisfied now that Wilmar is breaching all of those covenants and those contractual arrangements that have existed for over 100 years. Mr Acting Deputy President, Wilmar now refuses to even recognise the economic interest of these growers, and their comments, they have made that this has been a major decision on their part and they knew it would create community angst. But they talked about the deregulated marketing system for sugar and that they're exercising their own rights. But it was in the course of this that they have declared that the growers have no economic interest in their sugar. They have stated that the sugar, when delivered to their mill, belongs now to Wilmar, and that they will not recognise these conventions, these contractual arrangements that have been in place now for so long. So, Mr Acting Deputy President, tonight's speech, as much as it is about supporting my colleagues in those sugar seats, and as much as it is about supporting those grower-producers, those thousands and thousands and thousands of proud, small family farm operations right up and down the eastern coast of my state, it is also about giving a message to Wilmar. Now, I believe Wilmar is a responsible, very respected corporate citizen, both in our state and it would appear internationally on the matters that are before me. I'm certain that we will be able to, between us all, sit down, break bread and resolve this issue. But the message for them is very clear. There is a very deep resolve, an extremely deep political resolve within federal members of the National Party, federal members of the Liberal National Party who represent sugar seats and agricultural seats in my home state of Queensland, a very deep resolve amongst at least 7 members of the state parliament who also have sugar seats up and down the east coast, with QSL itself, with the peak bodies that represent these growers, and there are quite a number of them in my state, if it's consistent with statements of my state agricultural minister and encouraging statements from both the federal agricultural minister and indeed the Deputy Prime Minister has weighed in a very light way at a very early stage to tell Wilmar that we will continue to battle for these constituent farmers to enshrine in whatever form is necessary to give them the guarantee and security that their economic interest in their product, that product that they produce, that their families produce, and in some cases have produced for generations upon generations, that the economic interest will remain with them. If that requires us eventually to consider forms of regulation or legislation, then that case will be taken up at a later time. But in the meantime, and I know that Wilmar are watching tonight, in the meantime, Wilmar needs to take the message home that it won't matter how long it takes, we will continue to support these farmers and their families to ensure that their rights, their ownership rights, their economic interest in their cane remains with them in much the same way as it has done for over 100 years. Thank you, Acting Deputy President.